The voters of Orange County, Florida have approved a controversial rent control ordinance which would take away the landlord's rights to raise their rents to battle inflation. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have some bad news for landlords in Florida, and specifically in the Orlando area. The county of Orange County had a vote on a rent control ordinance. I actually did a video on this just a short while ago. And this rent control ordinance, basically it passed, okay? People in Orange County, Florida approved it. And it wasn't even close. It was like 60% to 40%. Now, I know prices have gone up all throughout the entire country, right? But every time I read about rent control and I read about these ordinances passing, it tells me that the general population does not understand economics of rent control. They don't understand why it's a bad thing. And they're only looking at the short-term problem. The short-term problem being, hey, rents are increasing a lot right now, and we want to put a stop to it because people are getting priced out. Well, the issue is that rent control might help people temporarily for a short period of time right now, but in the long term, it actually creates bigger issues. And those issues are caused by housing shortages, etc. Because if you are suddenly stuck under these rent control laws, rules, and regulations as a landlord or a real estate developer, you're not going to build. You're not going to want to rent out your units if you're not able to increase your rents in order to pay for your increased expenses. So everyone is facing, just higher bills right now. The cost of everything has gone up because of inflation. That is why rents are going up so much as well. Landlords are getting hit hard, especially, big landlords or people who have to refinance right now because interest rates have just dramatically increased. So if you had a 5-year balloon on your loan and, it just happened to be that 5 years just ends right this year, well, you had to refinance and you were facing much, much higher interest rates than you did 5 years ago. So yeah, you're in a bad spot and it's unfortunate, but if you don't raise your rents to cover that increased cost, guess what? Your business goes down. You could lose everything. On top of that, we'll throw in, increased expenses for repairs and maintenance and, utilities, etc. And guess what? Rents are going up. Taxes are going up too. The county, they say, oh, well, we don't want the landlords to increase their rents, but we're going to raise property taxes. And then think about the fact that like Florida keeps getting hit with all these hurricanes and, bad weather events, right? Yeah, insurance is going to cover some of the expenses, right? But every time my properties get hit, I have to pay the deductible, okay? So those deductibles, the expenses from all the repairs and stuff I'm doing, the stuff the insurance doesn't cover, well, guess what? That's coming out of my pocket. And if I am not able to raise my rents in order to cover those additional expenses, guess what? Then I might lose my properties, okay? And, they throw these blanket laws out there thinking that landlords, they live in a bubble where they don't experience inflation, they don't experience the effects of these storms, they don't have to worry about anything. It's just not true, okay? And if these people, they understood anything about economics, they would understand that. Oh man, it's a very frustrating thing. I'm not surprised that this vote passed. I'm not, okay? You could probably get rent control to pass by popular vote almost anywhere in the entire country, just because, simply put, people they don't understand the economics of the law. They don't understand that rent control actually hurts things. And instead they look at the very, very short-term thing and they're like, oh, well, these greedy landlords, they're just raising rents, but, for fun or whatever. No, it doesn't work that way, okay? So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think, okay? Did you believe that Orange County, Florida, where Orlando is located, did you believe that rent control would actually pass there? I know that there was like a red wave where more conservative Republican politicians were elected in the state of Florida, right? And that might have led you to believe that, there's probably a good likelihood that this rent control law won't pass. Well, that's not the case, at least not right now. Now, there are court cases pending, which could still get this law thrown out. I hope that they are successful, because I believe in Florida there actually is a state law that says that, you know, they can't have rent control ordinances in place. So we'll see what happens with that. But anyway, let's get into this article. This article is coming from globestreet.com, and it says, voters approve rent control in Florida County. Ongoing court fight prevents Orange County from enacting apartment rent limit. Let's get into the article. By a wide margin, voters in Orange County, Florida approved an ordinance that prevents owners of existing apartments from raising rents at a rate higher than the inflation rate for the region. The vote in favor of the rent control ordinance was 217,168, while 151,936 voted no, margin of 59% to 41%. The ballot question that was approved read as follows. Shall the Orange County Rent Stabilization Ordinance, which limits rent increases for certain residential rental units in multifamily structures to the average annual increase in the Consumer Price Index, and requires the county to create a process for landlords to request an exception to the limitation on the rent increase based on an opportunity to receive a fair and reasonable return on investment, be approved for a period of 1 year? Question mark. So yeah, they went over the question that voters voted on, right? And it seems reasonable, right? It seems reasonable from the outside perspective, okay? And they basically are saying they want to limit the increase in rents to inflation rate, right? But the problem is that the inflation rate overall, in general, can be very different depending on what business you're doing and what your activities are. Plus, the inflation rate has zero, and I mean zero, to do with your personal business. So, you know what? Inflation might not be that bad for somebody who has a 30-year fixed rate mortgage on their home that they purchased at the beginning of this year, you know, in January of 2022, when interest rates were super low. But if you are a new apartment building owner who just purchased the building this month, okay, you could be paying interest rates that are 2 to 2.5 times higher than the interest rates that somebody who purchased their property at the beginning of the year. Okay, not only that, but you might be paying at a higher cost basis than the previous owner as well. So the person who purchased their property 10 years ago, they don't have to raise their rent as much as somebody who purchased their property this year, because they bought the property 10 years ago for, let's say, you know, $1 million, but now that property is valued at $2 million. So you're buying the property at a higher cost basis than they did. So you might have to raise your rents more because, yeah, you paid a lot more money for it. And so, you know, in order to cover the higher payment that you owe your bank, and the more expensive, you know, you have more expenses than they do, you have to charge higher rents. That's why a lot of the times when properties change hands, it's almost a requirement that the new owner immediately start raising rents in the property. And yeah, it sucks for the tenants that are in there, right? But at the same time, this is the way that things work. Now, if you intend on buying a property and keeping the rents low forever for the tenants, I mean, that's up to you as the real estate investor, but that's not reality in probably say 99% of the cases. 99% of the cases are the landlord expects to make a profit and expects to be able to operate their building, you know, the way they want. And, you know, being capped in any way by the government is not going to be beneficial for them. Even if they say, well, inflation was 10%, so you can raise your rents 10%. Well, that's not going to help if when you purchase your property, the rents were already 50% below the market rate. So yeah, if the market rate is $1,000 and your apartments in your building were only renting for $500, well, why can't you raise the rents up to $1,000? Okay, that's your right as a landlord, as a property owner. That's why you bought the building, and now the government is telling you you can't do that. See, this is my huge gripe, and nobody has explained to me, why that's so wrong. And they're like, oh, well, you can petition and ask for an exception. Well, that takes time away. That takes time and effort. And, you know, if you get the wrong people up in the city council or whoever the approving authority is, right, they could still say no. Remember, they dictate how much rent you're charging. And you know what I say? I'm a person who just says, you know what? I'm just not going to invest in Orange County at all. Okay, I can go to the county right next to Orange County that doesn't have a rent control ordinance, that is full of properties that I can buy. I can raise the rent as much as I want to and not deal with this nonsense. Okay, and a lot of landlords, a lot of real estate developers, etc., will say the exact same thing. And that will lead to there being less rental housing available. And for the rental housing that is available, that means their rents are going to go up. There's going to be a shortage of rental housing caused by these rent control ordinances. So that's why I am so against this sort of stuff. Pending litigation will prevent the ordinance from going into effect. In September, a lawsuit was filed by the Florida Apartment Association and the Florida Association of Realtors seeking to invalidate the ballot measure, but a judge ruled that the suit could not proceed until after the election. An appeals court stayed the referendum on the rent control ordinance, a ruling that was overturned last week by Judge Jeff Ashton, who ruled Thursday that the ordinance could stay on the ballot, but the results of the referendum will not be certified by the Orange County Supervisor of Elections and the County Canvassing Board. After telling everyone the results would not be certified by Orange County, the County Supervisor of Elections urged voters to vote on everything on the ballot anyway. So yeah, what it sounds like is the lawsuit was able to successfully, stay this ordinance from taking effect. So at least for now, the ordinance is not being, taking effect. But even reading the terminology they put into the ordinance, it was only good for 1 year. Now, I don't doubt for 1 second that if it is enacted at all, 1 year is going to turn into 2, it is going to turn into 3, which is going to turn into permanent. Okay, so I mean, I believe I had read a long time ago that the New York City rent control ordinance was initially put into place just after the period of World War II. And you see that it's still going on here like 70 years later. So, I imagine that this ordinance could be the same thing, oh, it's only for a year. It's only temporarily until, the crisis is over, and the crisis never ends. Okay. So yeah, bad news. Fortunately, there still are those lawsuits that are stopping this from being enacted. But, it is very troubling when I see this sort of thing happening in a place that is known to be, more landlord friendly, okay? Because if this can pass in a place like Orange County, Florida, it can pass anywhere in the entire country, okay? Landlords everywhere are under threat of these rent control laws.